In the stillness of the night, James's furious shout startled the birds sleeping by the window. His face was dark, and his usually gentle eyes shone with a cold light.
Lily, stop being unreasonable.
Unreasonable? Ha! I just want an explanation. Why is there a lipstick mark on your face from another woman?
I told you, I don't know. I haven't done anything to betray you.
So you're saying the lipstick mark is a prank? Or someone framed you? Ridiculous.
I raised an eyebrow disdainfully, turned around unhurriedly, and picked up the 3-year anniversary photo on the table, letting it slip from my hand. Crash! The crystal photo frame shattered into pieces, and with it, my heart ached faintly. Because the lipstick mark was part of my own scheme, planted on his face while he was drunk. From the moment he woke up this morning, I had been following my plan, but this time more intensely than ever, because I was ready to leave him. Harsh words flowed mercilessly from my mouth, crushing our nearly 10-year relationship into pieces smaller than the shards on the floor. After the photo frame shattered, James fell silent. He stared at the picture of us embracing, the cold light in his eyes gradually fading, replaced by an unprecedented dullness.
Lily, in your eyes, am I really so unworthy, so untrustworthy?
This sentence seemed to drain all his strength. He lowered his once proud posture, picking up the broken pieces of us one by one. Seeing him so pitiful, I forced myself to endure the immense pain in my heart, my throat heavy as lead, to carry out the final step of my plan.
Yes, let's get a divorce.
James stopped what he was doing. His hands trembled, and as sharp fragments cut into his palm, drops of blood fell, and I heard his hoarse reply.
All right.
The plan was perfectly executed. I felt both happy and sad. I quickly walked into the hotel room, locked the door, covered myself with a blanket, and cried uncontrollably. In my sobs, I had a dream. In the dream, we experienced many beautiful moments. He loved me so much, promising to protect me for a lifetime. I happily embraced his warm, broad chest, saying we would never part. But unfortunately, it was just a dream. I had to face the harsh reality. I was guilty. I couldn't drag him down with me. My life had long been controlled by this island filled with sin, inescapable and at its mercy. The next day, James left without a word. After inquiring at customs, I learned that James had returned to our home country. I finally felt at ease. While tidying up the room, I discovered that James had taken my visa. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Was this his way of getting back at me? It seemed he hated me very much. Let him be, because I no longer needed it. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Even though I had anticipated the reason and knew I couldn't avoid it, I hesitated for a long time before struggling to open the door. When the door opened, I was met with several leering, sinister faces.
Miss Lily, please.
The men feigned politeness and took me away from the hotel. The van sped along the road and soon arrived at the largest underground casino in the area. The heavy smell of smoke, the frenzied shouting, and the various gamblers surrounding the tables. Their eyes were filled with extreme greed. In a room deep within the casino, amidst the flashing lights and flowing drinks, my dad, covered in blood, knelt before a refined-looking man.
Lily, I'm sorry.
Seeing me, my dad broke down emotionally, tears streaming down his face as he cried in agony with his head on the ground.
When I was very young, my mom passed away due to illness. My dad worked tirelessly, holding down 2 jobs to support my education and raise me.
Everything was moving in a positive direction, but at this moment, my dad let me down. He got addicted to gambling. By the time I found out, he had already lost everything on this island, our savings, the house, and the little money I had worked so hard to save.
The day the debt collectors called my phone, they threatened to take my dad's organs one by one if the debt wasn't repaid.
My dad's frantic screams told me not to get involved.
But how could I stand by and do nothing? He's my only family, my dad.
Miss Lily, you look even better in person than in the photos.
The refined man's gaze roamed freely over my body, then he took out a contract.
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is David, and I am the owner of this casino. My casino always upholds the principle that the customer is king, but your dear dad insisted on being a deadbeat, so I had no choice but to invite you here. As you are aware, your dad's debt is something you could never repay in a lifetime. Since that's the case, let's proceed as we discussed. Sign this, and all the debt will be wiped clean.
The contract was thrown in front of me, and when I saw the bold words "contract of servitude," my heart seemed to stop beating.
No! Lily, don't! Please don't sign it! Let me go! Don't sign it!
My dad went berserk, but the next second, he was knocked down and beaten by the nearby thugs. Amid the horrifying punches and kicks, I numbly picked up the pen and signed the contract.
Throw this useless man out.
At David's command, the thugs carried my limp dad out of the casino.
Miss Lily, from now on, your new identity is a servant. Tonight, serving me will be your first task. I look forward to your performance.
At this moment, David squinted his eyes, making my whole body shiver with cold. At 7 in the evening, urged by the thugs, I walked into David's room. Tonight felt endless, so long that I forgot I was still alive. Beneath David's refined exterior lay a beast's brutality. Covered in wounds, I curled up in the corner. When I saw David get up from the bed again, I instinctively trembled. David picked up his phone and came to me. He squatted down and gently tucked my disheveled hair behind my ear. Then, he put the phone to his ear and smiled as he spoke to the person on the other end.
Mr. James, your wife, is quite tender.
The call was on speakerphone, and I clearly heard that familiar, deep voice.
What did you do to Lily?
Don't misunderstand, Mr. James. I didn't do anything to your wife. I just had her learn some business skills, ha ha.
David's mocking laughter filled the air, and there was a long silence on the other end of the line.
Let her go.
Let her go? Of course, but it'll cost you, Mr. James. How about?
David mentioned an astronomical figure, which made the debt my dad owed seem like a mere pittance.
I was just a pawn. David's real intention in signing the contract with me was to extort James's family fortune. But in my impression, James was just an office worker. Where would he get so much money?
We've already decided to divorce. Out of old feelings, I hope you'll let her go. Whether you do or not is up to you. If you think you can use her to get money from me, you're very foolish.
The call ended, and David was stunned. Even I was momentarily dazed because those words were so unfamiliar.
Damn it, all for nothing!
Moments later, David angrily smashed his phone. He had miscalculated, not expecting James to be so resolute. Frustrated, David took his anger out on me. After endless suffering, I was about to faint when I heard David, drenched in sweat, call for the guards outside.
Take her to get some medicine. Tomorrow, we'll open for business. Charge the highest price. Do whatever it takes to recoup my costs.
Understood.
When I woke up, I was lying in a closed room, the air filled with a decadent scent. The guard beside me saw I was awake and harshly instructed.
The guest will arrive soon. Mr. David asked me to tell you not to be ungrateful. If the guest is not satisfied, you'll lose your last bit of value, and you'll face the consequences.
The guard left, and I looked at my body, cleaned and treated with medicine to cover the wounds. I broke down and cried. I didn't know how long I cried before the door opened again. Hearing footsteps, I quickly wiped away my tears and rubbed my red eyes. To survive, I forced a smile and turned around. But when I saw who it was, I lost control of my emotions again.
What are you doing here?
Staring at my dad's bitter face, all my resentment poured out.
I don't want to see you. Get out!
I shouted anxiously, not caring how my dad had managed to get enough money to enter this place. I just wanted him to leave quickly because if David found out, everything I had done would be in vain.
I'm taking you away from here.
Dad ignored me and stubbornly pulled me out of the room. During this time, my emotions were in turmoil. I kept resisting, but I couldn't break free from Dad's tight grip. Then, with a loud roar, I felt my heart sink.
Stop!
In the dimly lit corridor, several menacing faces rushed towards us.
Run!
After a few turns, seeing the exit blocked, Dad hid me in a corner.
Don't make a sound. Wait for me to come back.
Dad's expression was resolute as he ran in the opposite direction without hesitation. Soon, the sound of a fierce fight broke out. I covered my mouth in fear, praying constantly. Before long, the fighting stopped, and a figure appeared in front of me. I looked up expectantly, only to see a stranger. He grinned, seemingly showing off the machete in his hand. Because the machete was stained with my dad's blood.
Dad, what have you done to Dad?
My eyes were bloodshot as I grabbed the man's collar in a frenzy. The man didn't speak, just grinned, his laughter like that of a demon from hell. Then, smack! A heavy slap landed on my face. Behind the man, David appeared, twisting his wrist with a stern expression.
Damn it, got played by an old man. What bad luck. Go get a few people to take care of the situation.
The word situation made my head buzz. Tears fell on my burning cheek. It hurt so much, a pain I had never felt before. Helpless and desperate, I cried like a child, which drew David's sympathy.
Don't cry. If you cry too much, you'll become ugly. If no one likes you, you'll be worse off than a dog, hee hee.
David left, giving me a day to reflect. The next day, when David came again, I had figured it out. I obediently entertained the third guest. David, who received the transfer, relaxed his brows and thoughtfully let me have a full meal.
Good girl, as long as you work well, with me around, no one will dare to bully you.
With David's big hand on my head, I buried my face in the meal box, nodding. David was pleased and hurried off to arrange the next guest for me. But he didn't know that I wouldn't be waiting for the next guest because I was about to leave. I looked at this gray world, the light in my eyes completely extinguished. In a daze, I saw James and Dad. The two people who loved me were gone because of me. There was no place left to hold on to. Since living in humiliation had no meaning, I decided to end it. On a dark and windy night, while the guards relax, I went to the casino to end my life. I wanted to use my departure to disgust David. If someone left in the casino, unless he silenced all the gamblers, the news would spread and definitely hurt him. I covered my face, weaving through a group of gamblers, my eyes wandering, determining the method of ending my life. It was then that I suddenly froze, my expression trembling. Because I saw two unbelievable people. They walked into a room deep in the casino. The door wasn't fully closed, and through the crack, I saw James, David, and Dad, all smiling at each other.
Your methods are truly eye-opening.
Ha ha ha, Mr. David, you're too kind. That girl, Lily, I've raised her since she was little. I know her fiery temper well. If she's not tamed, she won't be able to convince others. As for this brilliant plan, we have young James to thank.
It's not a brilliant plan, just a little trick. Women are the easiest to deceive, thanks to everyone's superb acting.
Well then, Mr. David, our debt with young James is settled. I believe Lily will bring you substantial profits.
Dad had a flattering look on his face. David responded with a grunt, and the three of them clinked glasses and drank, talking confidently. But to me, it felt like my soul was shattering. I dug my nails into my flesh to believe this wasn't an absurd dream. It turned out that from the beginning, I was the only victim. Not only Dad, but James also got involved in gambling. To pay off their debts, they lured me into this trap. The contract of selling myself was just the first step in the transaction. Making me willingly sell myself was the true success of the deal. Why? One was my dad, the other my husband. How could your hearts be so cruel? I had naively thought of leaving for you. Now, it seems you don't deserve it. Not only will I not leave, but I will also seek revenge. I will make you experience my pain. I will make you pay for your despicable actions. Silently leaving the casino, I returned to that enclosed room. I took a bath, changed clothes, and then waited quietly. Before long, the door creaked open, and a middle-aged, elegant black man walked in. He sat beside me, familiarly wrapping his arm around my waist.
I'm here. Have you thought it over?
His gaze was gentle, and his broken Chinese expressed his respect for me. His name was Oliver, a well-known local entrepreneur.
To be favored by you is my good fortune.
I lowered my eyes and leaned closer, my delicate arms wrapping around his sturdy neck. My eyes, filled with a certain allure, were even more captivating at this moment. The next day, Oliver bought my freedom. Under David's incredulous yet flattering gaze, I gave him a meaningful smile. But David wasn't very smart and failed to realize his end was near. Oliver took me to his mansion. In the master bedroom of the mansion, a woman in a nightgown, still charming despite her age, walked out with a frown. It was then that I understood Oliver already had a family. I was the concubine he had bought with money. Although these things didn't matter to me, focused solely on revenge, the woman, Steve, cared very much. She allowed Oliver to have affairs outside, but bringing someone home had crossed her line.
Tell me, how much will it take for you to leave Oliver?
Late at night, while Oliver slept, Steve called me to the balcony, puffing on a cigar.
I don't need money. I can leave Oliver right now, as long as you help me with David.
That simple?
Seeing me nod, Steve immediately took out her phone and made a call.
Your matter is settled. Go and verify it.
Led by a designated person, I arrived at the casino, which had turned into a mess. Under the overwhelming force of a group of black-suited bodyguards, David's henchmen were all lying on the ground, groaning in pain. And David, with a bruised and swollen face, was kneeling before me.
I'm sorry, Miss Lily. I was wrong. Please forgive me. I beg you, please forgive me.
At this moment, David had already come to his senses, kowtowing humbly. I watched calmly. He didn't dare to stop until he fainted from the effort. I had him tied up and thrown into the local police station. Doing this was my greatest act of mercy towards him. After waking up, David did not disappoint me. Under Steve's immense influence, David confessed all his crimes, and the police had no choice but to detain this wealthy benefactor. With David gone, no one dared to oppose me, and I naturally became the boss of the casino. Watching those who had once bullied me now wagging their tails like lapdogs, I couldn't help but smile. I must admit, this feeling of turning the tables was exhilarating. But what truly mattered to me wasn't this feeling. It was what came next, concerning Dad and James. Those who rot in gambling will rot for a lifetime. Under my instructions, the news of the casino changing hands did not spread to the outside world. Sure enough, after waiting a few days, the enforcers brought news that Dad and James were back at the gambling table. I specifically had the casino's 1,000 hands greet them. As expected, the two quickly lost all their money.
Credit.
The veins on their foreheads bulged, and their eyes were bloodshot, clearly having lost their composure. I signaled from the shadows, and 1,000 hands quickly drafted an IOU, signed and sealed. With more money, the two became even more frenzied, their breathing becoming rapid. However, under 1,000 hands manipulation, they lost even faster this time.
Bastards, you're cheating. Give me my money back.
James was the first to notice something was wrong, grabbing 1,000 hands by the collar, gnashing his teeth. Cheating is a big taboo in the casino. James kept shouting, trying to force 1,000 hands to return the money. The idea was good, but the surrounding gamblers watched with interest, ignoring him. Because this show was put on especially for him. 1,000 hands smiled faintly, retreating to the back with the help of the enforcers.
Bad luck, let's go!
Finally, James realized something was wrong and tried to leave with Dad. Unfortunately, the exit was already blocked by the enforcers.
What do you want? We'll pay the money back. Let me tell you, I'm good friends with your boss, David.
Sorry, our boss's name isn't David.
What do you mean?
I walked out, the sound of my high heels clicking crisply on the floor.
Just as you thought, the ownership has changed. The current boss is me.
James stiffly turned his head. The moment he saw me, both he and Dad's pupils contracted sharply.
What, surprised?
Lily, you actually survived.
Dad was the first to react, his face lighting up with joy. He instinctively tried to come closer, putting on a good act. In contrast, James stood there dumbfounded, his face expressionless.
Not going to pretend anymore?
James responded with a grunt.
James, what are you talking about? It's not what you think, Lily, listen to me.
I want you to live a life worse than death.
A sudden roar stunned everyone present. My eyes reddened, my chest heaving violently. At this moment, I could no longer suppress the resentment in my heart. I glared angrily at James, who responded calmly.
Okay.
This undoubtedly shattered my last bit of sanity.
Boss, leave it to us. We'll make sure he knows what it means to live a life worse than death.
The eager enforcers swarmed over, tying him up like a bundle and carrying him to that enclosed room. Dad was left bewildered. My eyes were full of disappointment, but in the end, I couldn't bear it. So, I drove Dad away. Under the enforcers shoving, Dad stumbled out of the casino. Just outside the casino, Dad bumped into a figure. Seeing Oliver, who had fallen to the ground, my eyelid twitched slightly. I was just about to step forward to help when Oliver stood up, brushing the dust off his clothes. Not only was he not angry, but he also kindly helped Dad up. Seeing this, my impression of Oliver, this kind-hearted man, improved even more. After seeing off Dad, I led Oliver to the depths of the casino.
I've missed you these past few days.
He hugged me from behind, and feeling the warmth from his embrace, I smiled and gently broke free.
I think our relationship needs to end here.
I bowed sincerely. I was very grateful for his help, and I understood how inappropriate it was to make this ungrateful decision, but I had promised Steve, and I had no choice.
I'm very sorry, Mr. Oliver. I am willing to pay for my recklessness.
Just as I was prepared to accept any punishment, Oliver smiled gracefully, without getting angry. He downed the whiskey on the table in one gulp and then left calmly. As he reached the door, I heard his response.
Miss Lily, my love for you will not disappear.
His calm words carried an undeniable authority, and I could only smile bitterly. I had anticipated this possibility. This was the worst outcome. If Oliver disagreed, my agreement with Steve would fall apart. Next, Steve would certainly not let me go. It seems my end is near. But fortunately, with no more obsessions in my heart, I can leave with dignity. I just didn't expect Steve's revenge to come so quickly. That night, caught off guard, I was taken away by a group of black-clad bodyguards who broke into my room. In the desolate wilderness, Steve, with a cigar in her mouth, watched as the bodyguards dug a pit. She intended to bury me alive.
Farewell, untrustworthy friend.
The pit was ready, and 2 bodyguards lifted me, preparing to throw me in. At that moment, a loud shout stopped them.
Stop!
Seeing that it was Dad, my heart tightened. But soon, I breathed a sigh of relief. Because not far behind Dad, Oliver also appeared.
Let her go.
The cigar in Steve's hand was crushed out of shape, but she didn't dare to resist. Reluctantly, she untied me and left in a huff. After comforting me, Oliver also chased after Steve. Dad, full of concern, checked me over carefully for any injuries. This action brought back the grievances I had just swallowed.
Enough! Stop pretending!
I slapped away his wrinkled old hand in disgust, but the next second, Dad grabbed my shoulders excitedly.
You are wrong, my foolish child, terribly wrong. Things are not as you think. You misunderstood James. He wasn't gambling, he was pretending to be a gambler to save me. He knew your temperament, that no one could stop you from doing what you wanted. So, after seeing through your plan, he chose to play along, taking the opportunity to gather evidence of the crimes. David initially wanted to trick you and sell our organs together. To save you, James had to put on a show with me, making David believe you could earn money honestly, to keep him at bay. When we returned to the casino to gamble, we had already gathered enough evidence of David's crimes, and James had contacted the mainland police. We were about to rescue you, but things changed so quickly. Although you defeated David, you are now caught in an even bigger crisis. My foolish child, listen to me. The most terrifying person is not Steve, but Oliver. He cannot love you because he is a ruthless killer. His heart has a problem, and he might want to swap hearts with you.
A heart transplant? A chilling fear quickly crept over me. Dad, are you telling the truth?
Yes, Lily, I would never lie to you about something this important.
But I couldn't completely believe him, because James' actions during this time made it impossible for me to be reassured by just a few words. However, the next day, something happened that made it impossible for me to stay calm.
Please forgive my boldness, let's toast to our friendship.
Looking at Steve, who was now offering a friendly gesture, I smiled and downed the drink, but my heart was in turmoil.
A woman who wanted to end my life yesterday now seemed like a completely different person today. There must be an incredible secret hidden here.
Recalling my dad's words, it was hard not to connect the dots. Could it be that Oliver had told her about the heart transplant, making her let go of her grudge? I couldn't think of any other reason. To verify my suspicions, I sought out Oliver. After listening to my account, Oliver held his head and laughed bitterly.
I admit I have a heart condition, but I never intended to harm the person I love. Besides, I've already found a matching heart.
Oliver admitted openly. Seeing that I still had doubts, he took me to the hospital. Soon, 2 fresh examination reports were produced. The reports clearly stated that my heart and Oliver's were not compatible. Faced with such solid evidence, I had to admit that my dad had deceived me once again. But I couldn't understand why he would tell such an easily debunked lie.
What was the point of such a lie?
After some thought, I suddenly understood something. Considering that my intuition had never been wrong, I felt it wasn't my dad who lied.
He was telling the truth, but he had also been deceived by James.
The James the first knew was a very smart person. He must have had a purpose for doing this. To find out, I went to that enclosed room. Under my care, he suffered only superficial pain, without any serious harm.
Why did you lie to my dad?
Why? I was helping you, my dear wife.
What do you mean? Speak clearly.
Because Oliver needed your dad's heart. If I told your dad the truth and he ran away, with Oliver's murderous nature, wouldn't he implicate everyone involved? By then, both you and I would be gone. But think about it. If I lied to your dad, he wouldn't run away. He might even walk into the trap to save you, indirectly helping Oliver. Once Oliver is happy, he would reward us with money and power. We could continue living as a couple on this beautiful island for the rest of our lives. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Ha 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 ha.
His words made me furious.
Bastard!
Without time to deal with this scum, I hurried out to find my dad. I vaguely remembered that yesterday, my dad had disappeared despondently into the wilderness. I organized everyone to search the wilderness thoroughly, but the vastness of the area made it impossible to find him after a day and night of searching. Filled with anger, I rushed back into the enclosed room, only to find the chair empty, with only broken ropes left. James had long disappeared. Growing increasingly agitated, I recklessly sought out Oliver. But the scene before me was like a bolt from the blue. Oliver had completed his heart transplant on the operating table. His previously decayed heart was now quietly suspended in a container. Oliver had already woken up. Through the glass, he waved at me elegantly and gracefully. No. Walking out of the hospital room in a daze, I once again felt the piercing pain in my heart. Back at the casino, I drove everyone away and recklessly gulped down bottles of alcohol, intending to numb my wretched nerves with it. I don't know how many times I vomited. In my dizzy and confused state, Steve walked in.
Thank you for your generosity, my friend.
She handed me her favorite cigar, which I slapped away.
You are all bad people. Give my dad's heart back.
I mumbled, causing Steve to be taken aback.
Your dad? It seems you have indeed had too much to drink, my friend. I'll come back to visit when you sober up. Get some rest.
Steve left, and I fell into a drunken sleep. When I woke up, clutching my splitting head, I hurriedly found Steve. I needed to understand what she meant.
You didn't know?
Steve was surprised, then spoke thoughtfully.
Indeed, a man bound by love is the most foolish creature. Such an important matter, and he chose to keep it from you. Truly unfathomable.
What do you mean?
My heart was pounding.
My friend, the heart beating in Oliver's chest does not belong to your dad, but to your husband, James. He voluntarily signed the agreement to give his heart to Oliver.
Impossible, this can't be true. That heart was supposed to be Dad's.
I muttered, weakly refuting.
Please do not doubt my sincerity, my friend. You yourself are not a match for Oliver, let alone your dad who shares your genes. So that heart has nothing to do with your dad. Although I don't understand why your husband James kept it from you, I must thank you, because a woman's intuition tells me he did it for you.
Steve raised her arm, and I numbly shook her hand. After Steve left, I crouched in the corner, dazed, with her last words echoing in my ears. He did it for me, really. At that moment, Dad, who had been found, returned. He also brought back James's belongings that he had entrusted to him before the surgery. A shattered but carefully pieced together third anniversary photo. Inside the crystal frame was a USB drive. It contained evidence of Oliver and Steve's crimes collected by James, along with an audio recording.
Happy 3rd anniversary, my dear. I'm sorry for deceiving you, and I'm sorry for saying goodbye in this way. While gathering evidence of David's crimes, I discovered that there was an even bigger mastermind behind it all, Oliver. I have the heart he needs, and he threatened me with your and Dad's lives. I had no choice but to agree. I know your personality. If I told you the truth, you would risk everything to save Dad. I didn't want you to do that. I wanted you to live well, so I lied to you and Dad. Please forgive me, my dear. By now, I should be gone. Before I left, I contacted the mainland police and handed over this evidence, so I could die in peace. I love you, my dear. Take care of Dad and yourself.
The audio ended there. Dad's eyes were red, and I cried like a child in his arms. Just recently, I hated him so much. After contacting the mainland police, I handed over the evidence. Accused of harming mainland residents, Oliver and Steve were arrested and brought to justice. In a corner of the hospital, I found James's body. He was sleeping peacefully. I wondered if he would dream of me. With James, Dad, and I safely returned to our home country,